Hello, 21 Accents fam! Happy New Year! Today, in our Coaches Roundtable, we are going to talk about what was it like to start when you started intentionally changing your voice or accent? There's so much there. What did it feel like for you? Why were you, what did you want to change? Whatever comes up for you. And so uh, we'll just see whoever's ready to start first. Gracia.
Oh, this is a big, big topic for me. When I first moved to Germany, it was my first time living abroad, and I was teaching English as a foreign language. I'd studied the language for a full year and had studied for years before, but I was preparing. I'm going to move abroad, and I couldn't speak. I suddenly couldn't speak. I was afraid of making mistakes. I was afraid of insulting anyone, of embarrassing myself, and I just froze. And then I started to really pay attention to the way that other people spoke German and English. And I noticed just slight changes in pronunciation in words. And it's the same word, just like, speaking in English, it's the same word. But if I just adjust the pronunciation just enough, everyone can understand me. Just that. And then that became my voice. That became my accent. I would pronounce words that I've known my whole life. Just slight change. So then when I moved away, I had to unlearn how to pronounce the words, and that became confusing. And then I forgot English words altogether because I had spoken German for so long that I had to ask my German friends, how do you say this in English? Because I'm too embarrassed to look it up. So I'm just going to ask you. Um, But yeah, it was fascinating, the making a conscious decision to just shift the pronunciation. Not only was I understood, I was actually comfortable because they could understand me. They preferred my that shift in that just slight inflection, just a change, just the slightest little change. And I was accepted for that. It was appreciated. Like, oh, they understand me now. Like, oh, great. I understand exactly what you're saying. I was lost on that one word. Completely had no clue what you were talking about until like, oh, now I get it. Now I get it. But and there's a bit of control in that. And you can control the conversation. I can control my emotions, my feelings, the experience because I took that time to understand those tiny little changes. But yeah, that was the my very first experience with consciously changing my voice, and it made a massive difference in how I communicate and even just what I do now because I'm so aware of how I'm perceived, how people hear my voice. And it goes into so many other things. So yeah, there's more I can say, of course.
Yeah, I I have a very similar experience. Obviously, when I moved to the US, I also had that where I would not speak because I was so nervous of not being understood. Um, and that was like a language barrier thing too, of like, oh, how do I properly express my feelings? But accents wise, or just like the way that I sound, I have had so many experiences of changing the way that I sound or my accent, even when I was in Mexico. Like the difference of like, am I in the city? Am I in the ranch? Who am I talking to? And then I'll instinctively kind of try and sound like them. So what I've found is that it's easiest when it feels authentic. And I remember when I moved to the US and I started taking American accent classes, I bought this I bought the 21 Accents American Accent course. And the very first video, Amy's talking about having to journal and feel really comfortable with the accent and making it feel your own. I'm so sorry, Amy. The first time I saw that, I was like, what? I was like, No, I'm just doing this for acting. I don't care. I'm just doing this for acting. To all the people out there, I promise you, it's important because as long as you're looking at it as like someone else, you're gonna have that need to control it. You're gonna have that tension of like, this is not me. I'm putting on a fake accent. I am copying someone else. And it puts so much more pressure into the process than it really needs to. So it's the moment where it starts to feel like you and it starts to feel authentic when you kind of take that pressure away and you just start flowing and taking it one step at a time. That's been my experience with it.
It's so interesting. I mean, obviously, come to this from a pretty different perspective around voice, having made a decision to medically change my voice, to take something that actually changes it for me. And throughout that process, previously, to like 10 years, 8 years, however many years ago, I hadn't thought about voice in that way other than just like slight inflection, slight change depending on who I was talking to, or whatever, that I didn't really pay attention to. I wasn't conscious of. But when I started taking testosterone and like started to, hear the slight changes happen, especially in recordings of myself, I was up on stage at work once for a conference and like heard myself come out of the speakers, and I was like, well, that's weird and new. And it made me start to think about like, well, what is the voice that I actually want to have? Because I do have facility within that range that testosterone's giving me. And what happened is I started to pay attention to the actual resonance in my body and where it felt the best. It was all about like sensation and where do I enjoy feeling it? And I've kind of like come to this place in my chest here where it feels like very vibratey, like it's such a different sensation than when I had a higher voice. And it like feels really like, this feels good. Like this feels like me. But it took me some years, of kind of like playing with that. And I still notice I change especially the pitch of my voice depending on situations and who I'm talking to. And it's a recent thing that I'm realizing is like when I'm talking to like people in service industries, I go much higher and I'm much more like, oh yeah, thank you so much for your help. Like, yeah, I really appreciate it. Which is like, I'm sure there's a lot of gender training there. And then when I'm like talking to a dog or commanding a dog to come, I'm like, Smith, come here. I'm like much more like low, and it works, which is a whole other thing to explore, I'm sure. But it's been really fun to be able to actually pay attention to it instead of just being like, oh, it's my voice is just happening whether I do it or not, and to actually like notice the sensation and like what sensation feels the most like home and most like me as I'm speaking, and playing with it as well and seeing in different situations what feels the most comfortable.
Oh, there is so much. So many angles. I'm not going to talk about Australia or New Zealand and moving to there because I've done that before. Um, wow. Yeah, there's just information. There's so much information in that paying attention to what I'm is it naturally what I'm conditionally doing with my voice? And I've done a lot of that. So here are some things that I've noticed. My voice would also, so it used to just live higher. My mom's voice lives higher, and so I learned to pick up the phone by going hello, and people would go, hi Claudia, blah 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 blah, and then I'd have to say I'm not her, and it got weird. But then there's that whole, well then, okay, if she's taken, if that's not, then what do I sound like? But then also just noticing, oh, is my voice going up like this? Or when does it get kind of girly? I would call my parents and suddenly, hi, da 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 da, and it would get really girly. And I go, whoa, you're good. You're adulting. You can just bring it here. Not that it's not okay to live up high, and I have plenty of friends who do. And but I was noticing for me, it felt constrictive. It felt like I was only allowing myself to have a little girl voice, and I don't mean to disparage amazing, incredible girls and the girl that I am and was. Um, but it was just telling for me of like, oh, what am I allowing myself to be right now? And then like around men, especially if I was attracted to them, I would just get really soft and go, wow, okay, I'm diffusing my power. Why is that? Do I want to do that? No. So just, and then with doing voiceover and recording myself, as you were saying too, Max, noticing things, I would get feedback like, oh, you're being breathy. And I didn't think that I was being breathy because it was normal for me. But that practice of, okay, what would it be if I wasn't breathy? And just seeing what it's like to imagine my voice as a light, and that if I'm not going to be a flashlight, but if I'm going to be more focused as a laser, then I can allow that liquid, that resonance that's actually starting with my heart, and my lungs are adding breath to it, and that vibration is coming up because the pericardium that goes around my heart, your heart, is your tongue. So the vibrations coming through there, the freedom with which we let that vibrate, is the resonance that we're giving to each other. Love living into that.
Oh, goodness. Where do we go from there? Um, Years ago, Radiolab did a report on female voices around the world with babies. And it was so fascinating that doesn't matter where you come from, what language you speak, we, specifically female identifying, we have this way of communicating specifically with babies, and it is the exact same tone. It is the exact same sound. Doesn't matter what language you speak. And I'm sure that can we can continue that with how do women speak to men? Like just, to use your example, Amy, like, what does that sound like culturally? Um, but yeah, that it's a thing. And what I always like to do is connecting your authentic voice in different languages. And we have this idea, I don't know where it comes from, but there's this idea that if you're speaking in a different language, your voice has to change. You have to sound different. You have to put on a character, even if you're not a performer. And my experience moving abroad, living in different countries on different continents, and then becoming a parent and really paying attention to how I'm projecting, how I am speaking. Do I sound authoritative? Do I sound nurturing and mothering? And how am I perceived in the world? And is that authentic? Are all of those different sounds me? And when I'm studying other languages, which I still continue to do I sound like me? And even if it's natural to go up just a little bit, a little higher in the throat to access those sounds, because sometimes you have to adjust in order to access the sound. Does that feel authentic? And playing with that until it does or it doesn't. And if it doesn't, stop doing it. Or if that's where you want to stay, like I want to have this, when I speak in this language with this accent, I want to have this sound. I want it to sound a little breathy. I want it to sound a little immature. I want to sound very, whatever it is, whatever you want it to be. But you get to own that. You get to claim that, and you get to say that is authentic for that voice, that sound, that dialect. That is what that is. You get to claim it without it being a performance that's inauthentic, that's just feels off. You get to claim that authenticity. And yeah, you should play with it, own it.
Oh my God, you have no idea. Like how I was like, yes. And that's what it is. It's the never-ending search for authenticity within us. Like in whatever, even if it's like your mother language, there's you change and you grow and then you start sounding different. And I've related to every single thing that you have all said. Like, I had that same kind of question of, do I make my voice lower because that's how I usually sound, or am I trying to prove myself right now? And I started noticing that I would make my voice lower intentionally when I was scared or when I was uncomfortable, because that was my way of like pushing people away, or kind of like having this unapproachable like barrier. And then I had to start working on not doing that and understanding that like I am smart even if I sound like a girl. I am smart even if I like a girl, right? Because we sound all kinds of ways, but even if I sound girly and feminine, that's okay. And like it's such a an interesting conversation, the choices that we make to become who we want to be. But I think that what's important to remember is that that can be in constant change too. And as long as we're being intentional and aware of it, we can change it however many times we want. Our accent can change, our tone of voice can change, the words that we use can change, and it can change on a daily basis depending on who we want to be in that moment. I sound very different when I'm with my Mexican American friends in East LA than when I am with my actor friends in Larchmont, you know? Um, and I think that's awesome and that's beautiful. And both of those versions are still me.
Oh, I love that the idea of like being having facility with the way that you are speaking or the way that you're presenting yourself or whatever it is, but still having it live within the realm of you. You know, I think I know I have gotten stuck, and I think a lot of maybe some folks can relate getting stuck in like, well, I have to find this thing that is me, and then I'm only allowed to do that. And only this is the authentic thing, and then that's it, you know? Or like if I shift over time, am I being fickle or am I being, you know, not true to myself? And, you know, in reality, we're changing constantly in every possible way. So why wouldn't the way that you speak or present or behave or say, you know, why wouldn't that also change to kind of reflect different states of your life or different places you are or different ways you want to show up to different places. Yeah, I mean, I know that like my language, the way things that I say change a lot based on who I'm with. Like if I'm with queer and trans people, I say very specific things that I would not say around a room full of, you know, straight people because they'd be like, that's offensive. I'm like, well, yeah, but it's not. It's not, but it is, you know what I mean? Like I can say things in that space and it's like even just certain words, they mean something different in this place than they do in this place. And yeah, you don't have to explain yourself in one, you do have in the other. So it's, and it doesn't feel like disingenuous, you know, in each place. It's just sort of like, oh, like how am I relating to these people? Who do I want to be in this moment with them? Like what part of myself am I bringing here? What is safe to bring here? What is genuine to bring here? Not to say that I always get it right, because sometimes you know, I'm playing a part and I'm like, I see you doing this. I'm going to do it anyway, and I'm going to reflect on that later. Or I see you doing this and I'm going to stop, you know? But noticing it and having that facility and that like flexibility to play with it is actually really fun and interesting. And I think just like the rest of the ways that we get to change and grow, you know, it's another fun way to change and grow and how we speak and what we say and how we are with different people in that way. I think it's fun, honestly.
Yum! Yes! Because it's communication. It's commune. Ing. We don't just express in a vacuum and then be like, everybody figure it out, you know? I mean, we can, but it's such an exchange. And there's so much information there. And when I can feel, ooh, if I say this thing in this way, that person is gonna, like, one of my favorite moments was in New Zealand. And when I lived in New Zealand, I lived in Wellington, and it took me a moment to get the accent because I've just come from Australia. And there are rivalries between the two, like loving rivalries. Anyway, and I worked in the Cine Lounge. Sorry, now I've gone Aussie. I worked in the Cine Lounge, and I could tell usually when there was somebody coming in, whether they were American or Kiwi or something. And so I'd usually just match whatever I thought it was, partly because it's fun. But there was one guy, I could tell he was American, and then he was such a New Yorker. And like gradually through the conversation, because I'm like helping him choose what he wants to order, and gradually through the conversation, I'm like in there like mirroring him, and it was like he just opened up and he was having so much fun. He was like, God, I'm loving this. Okay, I would be thinking I would go for the cheesecake. What would you say to that? And I would say it is not a New York cheesecake. You will be disappointed. I would recommend the chocolate. And so he was like, great. He gives me this huge tip. It was super fun. And that was an authentic exchange for me because I know where I'm at with that accent. If it was different and I had felt awkward at all, it would not have worked. But there's something so fun in that playfulness, and in that it kind of blew my mind when I did the video 21 accents all those years ago, and people were like, but which one is the real you? I was like, oh honey, they're all me. And I've used that the example before of a kaleidoscope because it's like really helpful for me to think about. We have all these bits in us, and then you just twist it a little bit and the same light shines through and it might be a very different picture. But who we allow ourselves to be in each moment gets to be playful and fun. So let's wind it up with just like a brief final thought from each of us. I know we could keep talking about this forever, but we won't today. Final thoughts?
Enjoy your voice. Connect with your voice. It's yours. You get to be whoever, whatever you want to be. There is no one right answer. There's nuance, there's beauty to that. So, and working on your voice and trying to pinpoint it has to be exactly like this or else I failed. No, no, it's yours. So it gets to be you. It gets to have all of your depth, all of the layers that make up who you are. And yeah, just be you. That's it. That's it.
And I would add to that, be okay with staying in the journey and changing who that is on any given day that you feel it is someone different or that certain someone wants to try something different. Like have that freedom of trying new things, changing things, and journal. Like I would say like if you don't like journaling, just reflecting, kind of mindfully changing things instead of being in a panic and like trying to adapt to new situations all the time. Like take the time to reflect and sit with yourself and be like, how does this feel? What do I want to sound like? Who am I? And that's been very helpful for me in my journey.
Plus one to all of those. Um, yeah, and it also thinking about voice also made me broaden out to like voice in terms like what are you putting into the world and like what is your um yeah, who are you? What is your stance? What is your, what are you bringing and how that can play with how you're saying something, like what you're saying and how you're saying it. And I think bringing those into connection with each other is such a beautiful thing. Bringing those into alignment and having that integrity between the things you're saying and then how you're saying them and how you're, remaining in yourself while like playing and like seeing what feels, fun and good in each of those. So I think thinking about voice and voice, if that makes sense, is really cool.
Yeah, yes. Fall in love with your voice. I'm intentionally pausing there because some feelings may have just happened in your body and be like, what? No, I hate my voice. I record it and I hate it. I hate it. Like that's probably the number one thing that I hear from people. I hate the sound of my voice. What a sad, and I mean, oh, ow. That is so personal And I get it. There's so much wounding, and this is a very personal, intimate part of us. And we carry a lot there. So yeah, journaling, voice memoing, but honestly, even just recording yourself, whether you're working on an accent or not, even just recording yourself and getting used to, okay, this is what I sound like in this moment. Interesting. Let me keep talking. Okay, this is what I sound like now. Interesting. Is there something I feel like changing? If I change it, it will be different. It will not be better. It will not be worse. It will just be different. And to get to just peel back that lens that needs something to be right or wrong, or better or worse, and just be like, okay, that's different. And when I'm like this is how I feel. Interesting. How do I feel when it's like this? Interesting. And it brings this spaciousness, and it can be this playfulness to that process that you can start to fall in love with. So that is my wish for you. May you fall in love with your voice, and may we make space and honor everybody's voices, however we show up on each given moment. Love y'all so much. Vibes. We'll see you soon. Mwah.